Welcome back and thanks for staying with us on the program. The Nigerian banking industry has had its fair share of the macroeconomic headwinds, which has resulted in declining margins and significant write-offs of impaired loans. While on the path to recovery, the banking industry is now faced with the coronavirus pandemic, which comes with greater uncertainties and unpredictability of events in the business environment. Well, let's talk to Tunde Mabanwoku, the Chief Financial Officer at Wema Bank, to talk more about Nigeria's banking sector. Good evening, Mr. Mabanwoku. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Now let's talk about non-performing loans of banks. What are banks doing to reduce that?
In the last few months, the focus on a lot of banks have been on loan review and loan recovery. So the first step has been to assess and review the quality of the loan book, put in a lot more people in the recovery function, and then work with customers to term out the loans or restructure the loans where possible. The best way is really first and foremost empathy, to work with the customers to understand what is wrong, and then slowly and gradually restructure the loans for better performance.
So with loan books currently challenged, what are your strategies for recovery?
For Wema Bank specifically, what we did at the beginning of the year or towards February, March, was to firstly strengthen the remedial assets function and strengthen the loan review with a lot more technology, a lot more automation. So what we call relationship managers at the tip of their fingers can know if a loan is about to go bad. They have early warning signals that can help them track or monitor and measure the performance of loans. And then following that is now slightly more aggressive recovery. So quickly go to the customers, quickly work with them, quickly identify what the issues are, and try to find a way to resolve it. And we've seen some improvements. We've seen better liquidity from the loan book.
More banks are likely to go for Tier 2 capital raising due to COVID-19. Are you considering that as well?
What we did for Wema Bank a couple of years ago when we started the transformation was to focus on four things. Number one was people. Number two, improve the performance. Number three, work on perception. And then four, build the best digital platform. In terms of capital, we raised Tier 2 capital 2 years ago. So in the books of Wema Bank, we have around 24 or 25 billion worth of Tier 2 capital. So in the immediate, we are not considering raising additional Tier 2 capital. But in the next 12 to 24 months, we will be looking at additional equity or shoring up the Tier 1 capital of the bank.
Wema Bank reported a 40.83% increase in profit before tax in 2019. What drove the earnings and what are the bank's projections for the year?
The earnings came in largely from our strength in the retail banking segment. We focused a lot on retail and SMEs in 2019. Like I said, building first on the digital platform, making sure that it was reliable and performance there was 99.9%. So by getting more stability on the digital platforms, we got a lot more customers in, and that translated to the growth in PBT. For 2020, quarter one was quite good. We saw improved performance, improved gross earnings, deposits up. Quarter two, obviously, given the impact of COVID, we expect things to slow down a little. But our projections is year on year, you will see improved performance. However, we think the profit numbers will be slightly higher than 2019 profit numbers. And for Wema, we paid dividends the second time this year. This is the bank that did not pay dividend for 14 years. So year on year now we pay dividend. So we think this year too will continue on that track.
Well, government securities will be a major precursor for earnings in 2020, given their aggressive borrowing plans. How positioned are banks for this?
Government securities is a delicate one. And the reason being, banks have to balance the LDR, loan to deposit requirements set up by the central bank, and also balance liquidity requirements. So today, you have to have a liquidity ratio of at least 30% and a loan to deposit ratio of 65 and slowly inching to 70%. You still have to have your CRR of around 25%. So yes, government securities might be attractive as the rates inch up, but banks would largely play a cautious game in investing in government securities because the push by the industry is to do a lot more lending. But what government securities will most likely do is to use that to signal the direction of interest rates. So if interest rates are high on government securities, we might start seeing that flow to the corporate sector.
Well, there are a lot of uncertainties, and so it's not as easy to give accurate forecasts. But what is your outlook for the banking sector for the rest of the year at large?
I believe we will see a slight uptick in the NPLs as COVID impact will probably still be here for the better part of the year. So across the industry, you might see a slight uptick in NPLs. Across industry, you might see a tightening of net interest margins as customers appeal and push down the pricing of the loan book. In the industry, you see a lot more performance on the electronic banking channels. Our customers are being forced to migrate to e-platforms. So year on year, it will be a slower year than 2019, but I think the industry will pull through and have earnings almost equal to last year.
Tunde Mabawaku, the Chief Financial Officer at Wema Bank, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
Shareholders of Central Securities Clearing System have approved an 86 kobo per share dividend payout to shareholders. Given the approval of the dividend proposed by the board, CSCS will be paying a total of 4.3 billion naira to its shareholders, indicating a 22.8% year-on-year growth in return to shareholders when compared to 3.5 billion naira dividend paid the previous year. The clearinghouse also reported a 165% growth in non-core earnings, while revenue and profit before tax stood at 9.1 billion naira and 6.3 billion naira respectively. Frontline industrial giant Dangote Cement has released its first quarter earnings for the period ended March 31st, 2020. According to the latest financial statement sent to the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the cement maker's revenue grew by 3.8% to 249.18 billion naira, compared to 240.15 billion naira posted in the first quarter of 2019. At the same time, the company's gross profit rose by 3% to 144.85 billion naira. Pre-tax profit was higher by 11.5%, while its net profit was up by 0.6% at 60.59 billion naira within the first quarter of this year. Meanwhile, the company's board says it has obtained approval from the Securities and Exchange Commission for its planned share buyback program. But still staying with the industrial giants, Boa Cement has also reported stronger performance in its full-year financial results for the period ended December 31st, 2019. In its latest earnings report, the cement maker posted 47.5% increase in its group revenue, which stood at 175.51 billion naira against 119.01 billion naira in December 2018. Similarly, the group's pre-tax profit jumped by 69.1% to 66.23 billion naira. Net assets soared by 17.8% to 363.69 billion naira, while its earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization surged by 66.7% to 81.98 billion naira within the comparative period. The Debt Management Office says it has issued its offering of 150 billion naira 7-year sovereign Ijara Sukuk with a rental rate of 11.20%. According to the DMO, benefits for subscription of the Islamic bond include portfolio diversification for ethical and regular investors, regular cash flow as rental income will be paid half yearly to Sukuk holders, as well as rental income which is tax-free and risk-free. The security also offers opportunity for portfolio diversification and is acceptable as collateral for borrowing from banks and other financial institutions. The book building for the Sukuk opens and closes on June the 2nd, while the settlement date for the bond is June the 9th, 2020. Still staying with the DMO, the debt office successfully raised 424.5 billion naira at federal government's bond auction, which held on Wednesday, with an offering of 60 billion naira across 3 tenors. Swap rates also closed higher compared to the previous auction at 9.2% for the April 2023 instrument, while the March 2035 security was pegged at 11.7% and the March 2050 bond settled at 12.6%. Pension fund administrators had a field day with total bid of 189.2 billion naira as allotment stood at 160 billion naira. In all, the DMO allotted 296.2 billion naira after the successful outing. Well, that's all on the program tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Edidion Iwang. Do remember to stay safe.